I'm talking here about one of the studies in this area in which I worked with wonderful colleagues, many of them sitting in this room. So I'm presenting more of an open-ended perspective in vulnerabilities and the digital lives of young refugees. We do have our recommendations, our policy recommendations in writing, and you will be hearing about those, I believe, later on. But I want to use this opportunity here to offer a bit of that more open-ended approach to the different work, the different projects that we did with vulnerability, of course, with a focus on young refugees. So with respect and understanding to the complex lives that the people that we approach within this project, taking that these people have had experiences of uprooting, ongoing precarities, and different kinds of vulnerabilities, physical as well as psychological, we decided to approach that that project in a subject-centered way. So we decided to engage with these people through their own voices and to try to understand how questions around digital skills are actually situated within their life worlds. Our aim, as you can see here, our aims was to examine how young refugees use digital technologies to navigate their transnational lives before, during, and after migration, and to investigate how young refugees develop age-related skills and manage risks more generally through their use of digital technologies, while also recording and analyzing individual and collective tactics and strategies for managing risk and skills at the intersection of migration and digitization. As you will see in small fonts at the bottom, this has been a qualitative study that combined 96 interviews with young refugees between 14 and 19, located in urban contexts in Greece, Belgium, and the UK. So we engage with people who self-identify as refugees rather than having recognized rights as refugees. And these are people who are coming from different places. So what I'm going to offer here is this voice-centered approach on what we found. And I want to organize this brief presentation around three parts. The first focuses on the mediated lives of the people we engage with and how these mediated lives shape specific digital literacies. Then I will talk about the regulated lives that these people actually experience and how these link or shape connections and disconnections. And finally, I will speak about how it is to be and become a young person and a young refugee in Europe, and how this might generate, especially through the digital experiences of different people, different forms of ontological insecurities. So let me briefly talk about the mediated lives that these young people live. It is very important to locate these very specific projects on the different vulnerable groups within the reality that these people might have specific experiences. Young refugees have specific experiences because of their uprooting and transnational lives, but they are also young people. So it's always important to remember that their digital lives are shaped at the intersection of transnationalism and also their age identities. And of course, as these interact with their experiences they have in relation to gender, class, and financial difficulties. So like most young people in Europe, these teenagers, of course, lead by definition digital lives. And these digital lives involve different kinds of literacies, which of course, as we know, are distributed unequally, and as other people mentioned already, out of outcomes of the different elements of the ySKILLS project. But here on the board, I put two examples, two reoccurring findings in relation to what kind of media digital literacies these young people have. So we see on the first quotation by an Afghan boy of the age of 16 in Athens, how he talks about the digital literacies that are associated with education. We saw that a lot, how people used digital information, digital platforms very often to compensate for limited or interrupted or no access to education. But we see also, of course, how these those literacies interact with the precarities and the exclusions they face. So, for example, he wants to study political science, he uses different platforms to learn about it, but he knows that he has to get a scholarship because that's the only way that he can go to university. We see another kind of recurring theme of the digital literacies that have to do with the needs that are fundamental to leading transnational lives, and most importantly, building multilingual skills. And across the three countries, we saw many young people who develop very sophisticated skills because of the need that they know that they have to navigate different linguistic zones because of the lives they lead and the experiences they have to go through as they travel from country to country. So these lives are by definition digital lives, but they are also lives that are highly regulated. And I need to find my slides. So, unlike perhaps other young people who have certain points of references and certain protections and rights that perhaps are guaranteed by the stability of their home or the rights they have within national systems that protect them, these young people are very often exposed to systems of regulation that they have very little say about, and they're systems of regulation of their lives that have many detrimental consequences. And these regulations, they often try to manage through their by developing different skills. But different digital skills that they use especially to sustain important connections in their lives. But because these regulations very often are regulations that go well beyond them and reflect many of their precarities, they also show us how both their digital skills and their experiences of connection and disconnection are subject to different kinds of inequalities. So we can see on the first quotation there how actually for this specific group, sustaining the most fundamental connections they need within their family. Someone is talking about sustaining connection with their mother. They have to find a way to exist and sustain those connections within systems of global digital inequalities. So they create a Facebook profile with the hope that at some point their family will be able to get internet connection so that they can reinvent those fundamental connections that they need to sustain family relations. In the second quotation, we see the regulations that have to do with the European border policies, for example, that strict controls over borders and crossing means that many of these young people are subjected and dependent to different kinds of authorities. And in this case, we see how a young person is subjected to the authority of a trafficker, and their ability to digitally connect is subjected to these authorities' decision-making. And as they say, I traveled with one big man who was too big, too big. He had my mom's number on a paper. After I went to Italy, I asked him for my mom's number, and I called her to say I was safe. And this was the last time, the first and the last time this person spoke to their mom after their travel. Many of the risks of digital lives young refugees face are risks that many different people face, not only young, but older, as we can see in the first quotation. So we see again how they need to navigate this world of precarity by finding themselves exposed to different kinds of risks, as we see in the first quotation. They hacked my Instagram after I sent my account details, emails and passwords to myself on Instagram, so that when I come to the UK, I'm able to access them because I deleted everything on my phone. The person was able to hack my Instagram, go on all my emails, and hack my Facebook too. So the experience of hacking here is not particular to this group, but what we see here is that the exposure to these risks that might go beyond the particularity of this group comes with increased detrimental effects. So this person is not just experiencing hacking, but because of the precarity of their situation, they depend on exposing themselves in more risky information. So using social media platforms as the only way, perhaps, that they saw as possible to save personal data. And sometimes those risks for this group expand not only to their lives online, but also to the most fundamentals of their existence. And this next quotation was one of the most difficult revelations that we see in different contexts, that brings together the particular precarities that people in our study experience, and how the framework, the policy framework of borders and of communication in Europe might influence them. So I'm going to read just the beginning and the end of this quotation. So we came in an illegal way, and they told us that we shouldn't have a phone. In general, not just when we crossed the border. I left it back in Lebanon and nobody had a phone. At the border, they have something to monitor, a radar, and they detect mobile phones. Nobody had a mobile phone. It was difficult not to have a phone during this time. My mother was very worried about us. And when you go to the end, you understand why. She was so worried because of what she read in the news. It was very dangerous because they shot many people in the sea. They died. So in many cases, we saw these very difficult findings were skills, and the skills that people have to be aware of how their personal technologies are used to surveil them, and in this case, to push them back and push them outside the European border. Their skills, of course, creates new risks. So we have this ambivalence where it's precisely by having those digital skills that they end up being exposed in perhaps even existential risks. And these findings lead me to also think around questions of identity, how these young people are who they are, but also they become who they become as young people, as refugees, as new Europeans, within this context of intense precarities, where very often we see the online and offline risks converging, and sometimes the skills that they need to manage, some of them also leading to risks in the other area. So for many of our participants, living with such risk is a way of being. For them, perhaps more intensely than with other young groups. Different skills is a way of being. They're not moments of exception. They don't happen, those risks don't happen only when something goes wrong, but it is a condition which is for them ordinary. So they learn and grow up with these risks, but of course at a cost. And I will only refer here to the first quotation, where we see this young Syrian girl saying that the good thing is that you can communicate with people on social media, you can get closer to them. You can speak to them wherever they are. The bad thing is that on social media apps like Instagram and TikTok, you see how nice people's lives are and how nice their bodies are. And you feel upset and wonder why I don't have the same life or looks like that. This has really affected me. So here we actually see how the vulnerabilities related to the experience of being a refugee and the experience of being a young people converge. And arguably we can say that this intensifies a sense of vulnerability, but also the need to live with these vulnerabilities. So just to conclude, We saw again and again in this project how different participants develop a range of skills, a range of functional and critical skills, but within a paradoxical context. We see that their precarity limits certain skills that they have, for example, skills of programming, because very few of them have actually access to computers. Most of them just have access to smartphones. But also we can see how that same precarity that they live with generates other skills and other critical skills, such, for example, as the awareness of surveillance affordances of smartphones, the awareness and skills how to escape this kind of surveillance techniques, for example. But part of the paradox, of course, is that this marginality comes with other risks. So having sometimes good digital skills might mean having also higher risks for life itself. And what this paradox shows is how young refugees' agency, if we think of agency as their capacity to manage the digital, emotional, and existential risks they face, are a result of their marginality. But also at the same time, their marginality in the predicament they often face at this meeting point of risk and skills for digital and existential remind us how their skills themselves both help them manage exposure to risk and also intensify them, especially when they are so often exposed to different kinds of systems of control and exclusion. And when the system of control and exclusion very often use the same technologies that they want and they need to develop stable lives, these same technologies are there to limit their access to stable and safe life. Thank you.